The clerk to call a roll, please.
Senator Schickel,
He's here.
Senator Webb, Senator Westerfield, Representative Cantrell,
I'm here in the room.
Representative Decker,
She's on mute. She's here.
Representative Elliott, Representative Hatton,
Here in the room.
Representative Nemus,
He's also on mute.
Representative Reed,
Here in the room.
Representative Massey, Senator Carroll,
Present in the room.
Chair Fisher.
Here. It does constitute a quorum. So we will begin the meeting, and this meeting we will take a deep dive into the current state of the Kentucky State Police Agency. We have Justice is Mary Noble here? Okay. We have representatives from the Kentucky State Police to discuss issues of recruitment, retention, costs, things like that. So I will allow the presenters to introduce themselves, and the floor is yours. Is your microphone on?
There we go. Okay, I'll start again. Get it right there. Good morning. Before I begin, I'd like to thank you for having Kentucky State Police here today to discuss the unprecedented issues our agency is currently facing. I'm Colonel Philip Burnett, Jr., the Commissioner, and sitting beside me is Lieutenant Colonel Kyle Nall. Lieutenant Colonel Nall is Executive Director of the Office of Administrative Services. I know typically only one KSP representative would be presenting here today, but my father is extremely ill and there is a possibility I will not be able to be here this morning. As a result, I requested Lieutenant Colonel Nall prepare an in-depth presentation describing the issues that our agency is currently facing today, which will entail details of resignations, retirements, and recruitment efforts that he will present shortly with that presentation. My father, as important to me as he is, knows my love for this agency and insisted that I attend today. Representing the agency as commissioner, I knew I needed and wanted to be here as well. Tomorrow will mark my 26th year as a member of Kentucky State Police, and throughout my career I have never observed such a dire and critical issue of dealing with retaining and recruiting qualified troopers and telecommunicators to fulfill the agency's mission, which is to promote public safety through service, integrity, and professionalism, utilizing partnerships to prevent, reduce.
I'm told via text that we've just begun, but I can't hear anything.
I can't hear anything either. I can't hear anything.
Yeah, I can't either.
No sound.
Yeah, and the Zoom link wasn't working.
Oh, there's Joe.
Are you connected now?
I didn't know we can't hear.
It shows that we're muted.
Oh, the room is muted according to my Zoom screen here. Now it's not.
Can you hear us now?
Yay, there you are.
Welcome, everybody. So please proceed, Commissioner.
Okay. Need me to start back over or just proceed from there? Okay. And continuing with our agency mission, I'll just start that over so they can hear.
Excuse me, Joe. Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, John.
I just wanted to make sure I got logged for roll call.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr.
So,
Chairman, this is Joe Elliott. I
Yeah.
was making sure you could hear me. I'm present.
Daniel Elliott is present.
Jennifer Decker is present in District 58.
Okay. Did we miss anybody else?
Well, Whitney Westerfield.
Good morning, Whitney.
Good morning, Chairman.
All right, I think we've counted everyone. Thank you. Please proceed again.
Yes, sir. To reiterate, starting over our agency mission, to promote public safety through service, integrity, and professionalism, utilizing partnerships to prevent, reduce, deter crime, and the fear of crime. To enhance highway safety through education and enforcement, and safeguard property and protect individual rights. What I get started with is to talk about our current staffing of Kentucky State Police. When I when I was preparing my document to testify today, currently we had 785 troopers, which pulls up from a historic low of 765 last fall. But in reviewing some of my work coming into the office at headquarters, I had another resignation last night, which will put us at 784. At the time in the fall, we were at historic lows last November when I testified, which we had 765 last fall, but we had 45 cadets that were in Cadet Class 100. Those graduated, and that put us up to 810 troopers. But since then, attrition is setting us back at 784. So what we did, we wanted to look at the snapshot of our agency, and we were able to go back all the way to 1988, almost 34 years. And what we were able to determine, the historic low of 784 is in 2006, we had 1,009 troopers. So what that amounts to is a 28.5% reduction in troopers on the road providing police services for Kentuckians. To put that in perspective for everyone, that is a loss of every trooper in our western post, which is Mayfield, Madisonville, Bowling Green, E-Town, Campbellsburg, Frankfort, Columbia, and Henderson, plus our entire K-9 section. Those are troopers that we do not have out providing services. Then we started wanting to analyze, we want to do an in-depth analysis of our agency. We want to look at every aspect of what we could do to curtail our loss of manpower. So we started looking at resignations, which those have been increasing as well. What we were able to determine in 2020, we had 25 resignations, which is, and this year alone, since January the 1st, we've had 25 resignations as well, which is an average of 5 per month. Obviously, this is very alarming. Not only are we losing qualified personnel, but several of those resigning have received very high levels of training that is very expensive to replenish. Then we started looking at retirements. We want to see how many troopers were eligible to retire. As of May 1st of 2021 this year, currently we have 140 of our 784 who can retire. And on August 1st, which is typically a retirement cycle for troopers, that will put us up to 170 that are eligible to retire out of that 784. In looking forward, January the 1st of 2023, approximately 230 troopers will be able to retire. That is conservative estimates because with that we were not able to capture what troopers may have prior military time, prior time with other agencies, prior other service time purchases. With our current staffing levels, it's very difficult to take troopers off traditional duties to provide training as well to be able to put in the non-traditional law enforcement duties that the Commonwealth has become accustomed to, such as conducting officer-involved shooting investigations for Kentucky law enforcement agencies, providing our electronic crimes branch for digital forensic investigations assistance with other agencies across the state, our special response team call-outs for warrant service, barricades, other types of requests, our drug enforcement, our special investigations branch to work white-collar crimes for various state, county, and local agencies. And also, on occasion, we're requested from law enforcement agency heads to conduct criminal investigations on their personnel or some other type of investigation that they feel that would not be very beneficial for them to investigate. So there's a lot of things that we do extra on top of just traditional duties that you see the trooper in doing highway safety that we do providing services for Kentucky and other law enforcement agencies. Then we started looking at our recruitment, where our numbers are down. We've looked at our resignations. We've looked at our current manpower, and then we want to start looking at recruitment. What can we do to make sure we're doing everything possible to bring in men and women into our agency? So we looked at that from top to bottom. What we looked at was we had our application process that had been open for 9 months. We had less than 300 applicants to be a Kentucky State Trooper, which is a far cry from when we were in the thousands in the late 90s. With just 300 applicants, that's not an effective number to be able to conduct a academy class. So what we did is in talking with other agencies, other state agencies, see about their recruiting issues. They typically have their recruiting issues were down as well, but not to our level. And some of those were in talking with pay disparities, but I'll talk about that in a minute. But one thing that they had a few more people in the recruitment section. So what we did is typically our recruitment section has been typically runs about 2 troopers, is we expanded that to five troopers. But there's a cost to pay to that, because what that amounts to is we're taking troopers off the road that were already short, answering calls for service, answering domestics, collisions, all those things that we do to put those in recruitment. But we realized we had to do this on the front end. We had to make that sacrifice to be able to put them in there to get our numbers up. We also looked at our recruitment efforts dealing with minorities and females. We didn't feel like our numbers are where they needed to be. So we started talking with our current troopers, minority troopers, our females, and they said what brought them into the agency was seeing someone that looked like them, seeing a female, seeing a minority in that gray uniform. So what we did is we reached out to 2 of our retired troopers that are a minority, asked them to come back in the recruitment section. They did. We also transferred one of our minorities from one of our posts, as well as a female from one of our posts, and then another trooper in the western part of the state. So currently we have 5 troopers in our recruitment branch. And as a result, those were up and running March the 1st, and then our numbers grew just from March the 1st to when we stopped the application process a couple months later. That put us up to about a little over 500 applications. And the great thing about that is with those efforts is that our numbers went up in minority applicants and female applications. So with those numbers, right now we plan to be able to start a class October the 1st of this year. We're currently in the testing process, different phases of it to see how those work out, how many will be eligible to attend the class. But with the possibility of a retirement cycle and the average of 5 resignations per month that we're currently averaging, those will not be ready for patrol duties until June the 1st of 2022. Our academy is 24 weeks. Our field training officer program is 12 weeks. So those are going to take some time to get those out and get those where they'd be on the road. Other things that we did to increase our recruitment, and specifically minority and females, is we talked with or consulted with Dr. Aaron Thompson, Kentucky Department of Education, Vicki Stone with the Personnel Cabinet. They've helped us work through initiatives to help increase that applicant pool. Another thing we did is we wanted to look at our minorities. Why aren't they applying as well? So what we did, we looked and we were able to determine that 82% of minorities live in 15 different counties in Kentucky. And in those counties, each of those counties have a sheriff's department or a local police department that make up to $30,000 more in starting wages than a Kentucky State Trooper. Plus, they're able to stay in that home location where they live. Obviously, at the time, we can't address the monetary concerns at that time, but we did try to look at about the residency requirements. So what we did, as the years passed, you come with the state police, you say that you'll work anywhere in the state of Kentucky upon graduation. So what we did to try to help with that is we did the Pick 3 program. And what that is upon graduation, upon their graduation, that they put down their 3 top posts that they would like to work at, typically which will be close to their homes. And out of those 3, we will pick that post that is most need for the agency. That way we hope to increase that pool, because what we were receiving is they were telling us, if I'm in Bowling Green, I don't want to go to Pikeville. I don't want to go to Harlan. Or if I'm in Ashland, I don't want to go to Mayfield. So we've had some pretty good success out of that. Other things we did with funding that we received through the legislature for recruitment is we did utilize 2 trooper R's. You may have noticed some static billboards that are up across the state. We utilize those as a consultation with the Georgia Highway Patrol. Their numbers really increased by doing that. We are doing micro-targeting and then also regional recruiting initiatives. So time will tell here in October how all those pay off for how many cadets we're able to start in this class. And then finally, we looked at compensation. And we knew that compensation and pay disparity was one of our biggest issues. But we wanted to make sure we looked at every single aspect dealing with our manpower, with our agency that we could. Every day, Lieutenant Colonel Nile, myself, and the command staff are looking, what can we do to increase manpower? Now, as I said, all law enforcement agencies are facing that, but they're not facing it at the levels that KSP is facing. So we looked at compensation. And what we wanted to do, we want to see a definitive chart of pay for Kentucky. And the last document we were able to utilize was by DOCJT in 2018, which is a comprehensive pay survey that they conducted. Not every agency in Kentucky had to participate in that, but the majority did. And what that showed was the Kentucky State Police was 74th in starting pay for law enforcement agencies in Kentucky. And then our resignations. We compared that back to talking with troopers who had resigned, and overwhelmingly, over 50% cited reason for leaving was for pay. Another thing we did, we started looking at every agency that bordered Kentucky, highway patrol, state police agencies, and what we determined that our cadets starting pay and our probationary trooper pay, we were last at every state that bordered Kentucky. Now, in 2016, we had the trooper pay scale, 16052, and that really helped with retention at that time. But what we found is that the pay scale has not kept up with other agencies in Kentucky. Other agencies have leapfrogged above us. So we feel that we're very well maybe less than 74th at this time. We've attempted to analyze, as I said, every possible aspect of our agency to correct this problem with retention and recruitment. But at the end of the day, what we're looking at, our pay scale is a huge issue that we need to correct to be able to attract the best of the best. As you look at the services we provide for Kentucky, not only just traditional law enforcement duties, but also the expanded law enforcement duties that we do for Kentucky. We've had to maneuver assets to Frankfort, to the capital. We've maneuvered assets to Louisville. We've maneuvered assets to Western Kentucky, to Eastern Kentucky, dealing with some of the issues that we're dealing with in today's society. Also, the assistance that we're giving these agencies. For instance, an officer-involved shooting or electronic crimes branch investigation, they're very expensive, they're very time-consuming. But we're doing these duties free of charge to other agencies. But these agencies are paying more than the KSP does, therefore they're taking our personnel from us. And it's really a constant grind for us to keep qualified, trained individuals up in these non-traditional roles. And the fact that with the booming economy in Kentucky, not only are we going to be dealing against other agencies about pay, but now we're going to be dealing with private sector entities as well. That's the issue dealing with our swarm troopers. Now I'd like to talk to you about our telecommunicators. This is another manpower issue that we're currently facing. Currently, we have 187 telecommunicators across Kentucky at our 16 posts. But we have an extremely high turnover rate. That's a very stressful position. It's a stressful position. They're working nights, weekends, holidays. Matter of fact, last year, we had 42 telecommunicator resignations. And so far this year, we've had 17 telecommunicator resignations. We're currently working on a revolving shortage of about 26% dealing with our telecommunicators. And just like that trooper answering that call for service to a domestic, an injury accident, but we have to have these telecommunicators sitting in that seat to take that phone call that any Kentuckian, the worst day of their life may happen where they need medical assistance. They may need a law enforcement officer. Starting pay for a telecommunicator is $24,000. They have to go through a 5-week training academy. They're required to be certified in emergency medical dispatch, and as a result of these certifications, other agencies are consistently contacting telecommunicators to bring them over to their departments, and are consistently leaving. In closing, this is just an overview of our main two issues dealing with personnel, dealing with KSP. I'd like to thank you again for giving me the opportunity to discuss the issues with KSP. I'm available for questions now or throughout this presentation. Lieutenant Colonel Nile does his. But again, I'd like to thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner, for being here today in the situation you find yourself. I know how concerned you are about this issue. You've been here to testify in the past about the recruitment issues that you're facing, and I know you're going through some family issues, and our prayers and thoughts are with your family today.
Thanks, sir.
So if any members have any questions for the Commissioner, or do you want Senator Carroll?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Trooper, are you going to get into some more stats? I don't
Yes,
want to.
sir.
I think I'll hold my question because you may cover what I'm going to ask, so I think I'll wait.
All right, any other questions? Okay, we'll hold questions until your presentation.
Okay.
Please proceed.
As Commissioner said, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Kyle Nall. I'm the Executive Director over the Office of Administrative Services. And what that means is that basically everything he just talked about falls at my doorstep. I oversee our recruitment branch. I oversee our human resources. I oversee our academy training, the budget, and strategic planning. So how we're going to move forward from the current situation that we're in. Several other branches, but those are the ones that specifically apply to where we find ourselves today. And I'm actually in my 19th year with KSP, which is a pinnacle. I've reached that point where I can say that I've been with KSP as long as I was alive before I joined KSP. So just like the Commissioner, I'm extremely passionate about these issues that we're facing. And even though charts and graphs and numbers aren't exactly the best way to show your passion, that's what I've put together today is a presentation full of charts and graphs and statistics. Because I believe numbers paint a picture that is not subjective to my interpretation, a picture that just tells facts. When I was getting ready to start my master's thesis, I was given the opportunity to decide whether I wanted to go with qualitative research or quantitative research. And I said quantitative all day long. I want to be able to show a correlation between two things. So what we've got today for you is a presentation full of information and statistics that are specific to our current problems that we're finding ourselves in. We're going to start here with contiguous state comparisons. So we've got Illinois, Missouri, Ohio, Virginia, Indiana, West Virginia, Tennessee that all border and touch the Commonwealth. As you can see from looking at just the base salaries, and these have been cost of living adjusted. So one of the things that Representative Petrie requested in our initial meeting on Friday was that we come up with statistics that show cost of living adjustments for cost of living in Commonwealth of Kentucky versus these other states where they have these salaries that are obviously more than ours. As you're looking, you can tell that, Illinois is over $20,000 a year more than us. In that far right column, you see the green numbers. Those are after the adjustment for cost of living. That's the difference in salary. So the lowest one is $4,260 right at, and then the highest one is $20,621. So on average, they're about $10,100 a year more than we are currently paying our starting troopers. These other states are starting theirs out about $10,000 ahead of us. As Commissioner already said, according to the 2018 DOCJT Comprehensive Law Enforcement Survey, we are at least 74th in the Commonwealth. Now, there's an additional survey coming out in 2021, so that'll be updated this fall. We will have information for you all that will provide you with an updated statistic on where we fall in the Commonwealth. I would say it's probably well below 74th by now. We are losing sworn personnel statewide to higher salaries. Specifically in the northern Kentucky area, as the Commissioner said, we'll lose troopers with 2 to 3 years, and they'll go make $20,000 a year more for Erlanger PD or for any number of Kenton County Police, Boone County Sheriff's Office, any number of agencies that pay a tremendous amount of money more than we do. We're also losing supervisory rank personnel to these other agencies. We're losing sergeants and lieutenants that are starting out at a entry-level patrol position at another agency and still making more money than we are. Lexington Police Department is currently hiring at the rate of pay that we pay a 13-year trooper. So it's not going to bother a trooper with 10 years or less to pack up and leave and start over again at a new department where they can make more money. We're also losing telecommunicators to higher salaries, as the commissioner said. We're losing some of our telecommunicators are leaving for positions at local 911 centers where they're making $40,000 a year starting out, and we're paying them $24,000. And what we find ourselves doing is being human resources for these other agencies. We are hiring these folks, we're vetting them, we're putting them through training, we're getting them certified, and then we're losing them to these other agencies that are able to pay them more and compensate them better. We currently have 180-ish telecommunicators in the state with 210 full-time positions. 42 telecommunicators resigned last year. That attrition rate and turnover rate is appalling. 42 out of 180 resigned in 1 year. This year, 17 in the first 5 months of this year have resigned. So we're on par to see that same number again, 41, 42, somewhere in there. Our current trooper strength trends, as you can see from this chart, you can see the ebbs and flows. We started out in 1988. This covers the last 3 decades of our trooper strength. In 1988, we had just under 950 troopers. You see there's some declines, some inclines. We were just kind of ebbing and flowing. We usually collect this data in August of each year because that's when we've already had our bulk retirements. So when we collect that data, it keeps it consistent. We kind of know what the state of the agency is after the bulk retirements have already occurred for the year. So when you see the uptick there at the end of the chart for 2021, that's a bit skewed. It shows us at 787 on that chart, but as commissioners already testified to, we're currently at about 784 after receiving another resignation last week and another one last night. We'll be at 784. So that uptick is a bit skewed because in August, after we have bulk retirements, that'll make this data a lot more consistent. So if we have 40 folks retire in August, which is about average, and that's actually an optimistic outlook for us to just have an average year of retirements when we have so many that are eligible. If we have 40 retire, we're going to hit a historic low, and it's going to put us well below 750. But as you can see, in 2006, we reached a peak at 1,009 troopers, and pretty much since then, it's been a steady decline. In 2018 and 19, as you can see, we were declining. We went from 831 in 2018 to 792 in 2019. 2019 was the first year in my career that I ever knew of us being below 800 troopers. And I was the academy commander at the time. And we were running back-to-back-to-back cadet classes with just 6-7 weeks between them. We ran 4 cadet classes in 2 calendar years. Commissioners already testified to the fact that our training is 24 weeks. That's 6 months for each class. So you can figure if you run 4 in 2 years, there's not much downtime in between. If we had not done that, I have no idea where we would be today on manpower. We graduated 125 troopers out of those 4 cadet classes. We've already lost several of them to other agencies. Moving forward to our resignations, as you can see, there's a pretty steady incline in these bar graphs. 2019 being the exception, and I'll kind of get into that in a minute. But you can see that we have steadily rose, and I actually looked at the data last night before coming here this morning. And just in preparation, 2011 to 2014, we were averaging between 7 and 8 resignations a year as well. So 2015 was just right on par with where we were at the time, and then we started to see these drastic increases to where we are today. When you add this year's projected total, with averaging 5 resignations a month so far this year, we're projected to hit 60 resignations this month in addition to all the retirements that we're potentially going to see in August and throughout the year. The reason for 2019 that we believe we saw a decrease, and the reason why these have fluctuated somewhat, is because in 2015 there was a rumor going around our agency, and I don't know how much you know about KSP, but basically telegraph, teletrooper, we have rumors all day long, and it's just what keeps us going. But those folks heard that rumor that we were going to get a significant pay raise, so several of them stuck around, and we did. We got our salary schedule that went into effect in 2016 in KRS 16052. In 2018, after the DOCJT survey was released, we lost 24 people that year. That was a high at that point. That was the peak. In 2019, Commissioner Sanders at the time communicated the message to the field that he was going to seek a significant pay increase for troopers across the board to try to counter what was in that 2018 DOCJT salary survey. So we believe that's why we saw a decrease in resignations in 2019. In 2020, we're back up to where we were in 2018 with 25, and then today we're already at 25. We're past 25 in 2021, and we just rolled over into June. So the fear is that we're going to hit a historic low, and we're not really going to be prepared for that. To get into the data analysis of those resignations, we've had 127 people resign, and 63% of those, which is about 80 of those troopers, 80 of those troopers have cited that salaries are the reason why they left. That's about 63% of the ones that have resigned. 15 of them left for federal law enforcement positions, 31 went to local law enforcement positions, 30 went to private sector employment, 2 went to full-time military positions, 1 went to a municipal fire department, and 1 went to an out-of-state police agency. So as you can see, we're losing people to all different varieties of positions, a lot of them to local law enforcement because they're trained, they're certified, they're very marketable to those jobs. Federal law enforcement agencies are killing us. They're recruiting our people left and right and plucking them out. When we get into retirement eligibility, there's 2 ways that you can figure these statistics, so I figured them both ways just to be safe. Representative Petrie had asked us to figure out how many of our personnel are just recently becoming eligible versus those that have been eligible for some time. So instead of creating a convoluted graph here where you have 7 or 8 bars that have data applied to them, what I did was I went back to see how many people in calendar year 2018 and 2019 were already eligible. And that was without their sick time credit. This is just 240 hard months of service, 20 years of service as a KSP trooper. 49 people are eligible to retire. Same thing in 2020. We had 49 additional people who joined those ranks. This year we'll have 5 additional that will join those ranks, and then in 2022 we will have 33 that will join those ranks. So at the end of next calendar year, we will have 136 sworn members who have over 240 months of hard service with our agency. So that excludes their sick time. Now, when you get into including sick time, which is the same as service time with our agency and the way our retirement works, those numbers are exacerbated. In 2018, 2019, that number would have been 101. In 2020, we added 29 more to that. In 2021, we're going to add 39. And in 2022, we're going to add 61. So at the end of calendar year 2022, we will have over 230 sworn personnel who will be eligible to retire. And as the commissioner already stated, those don't include those with military service time that they've been able to purchase, or any other prior, if they've had federal service time or anything else that they were able to purchase service time from the retirement system. Some of those folks are eligible also. So I wanted to fast forward just a little bit to see where we would be at the end of the biennium for this upcoming budget. So in July 1st of 2024, at the end of that biennial budget, we'll have almost 300 of our personnel who will be eligible for retirement. And when you're sitting at 784, 300 is a scary, scary number. So if we don't do something to get these folks to stick around for a few more years, it could be absolutely detrimental to public safety. Moving forward into our recruitment trends, this just gives you a little bit of background. I did these in decades because it's a lot simpler and less convoluted. In the 1990s, we averaged about 1,750 applications per year. In 2000 to 2009, we averaged about 700. That dropped just a little bit from 2010 to 2019 at 625. And that brings us into our current crisis where we're averaging about 300 a year. So looking at those trends, the 2010 to 2019 decade is a little bit skewed. In 2017, we announced that we were going to allow people to join our agency and enter our academy with 3 years of work experience. They no longer had to have 60 hours of college credit under their belts. We were going to give them their associate's degree as they went through training. We have a joint program with Bluegrass Community and Technical College, and that allows them to get their associate's degree while they're in training. That year, when we made that announcement, we had over 1,000 applications. So that bottlenecked then, and we're back down to about 500 for the remaining years in that decade. In 2020 and 2021, where we currently find ourselves, we've averaged less than 300 actually, because we had about 299 in the year 2020, and then we carried that recruitment cycle over into 2021. We also have LEAP classes, which makes this a little bit more convoluted on how we gauge our recruitment numbers, and so I broke those down separately. In 2012, we ran the LEAP class, which is an accelerated program where a POP certified officer with 2 years or more of experience can come through a abbreviated class. It's only half as long as our typical training class. In 2012, we ran Cadet Class 90. We had 145 applicants. In 2016, we ran Cadet Class 95. We had 155 applicants. And in 2019, we were at less than a third of what we were at 2016 with 45 applicants for Cadet Class 99. After doing backgrounds and vetting those folks through all of our hiring process, we ended up starting 12 in that class, and we graduated 7. So that did not yield very much positive manpower into the field. Moving into the current situation with Cadet Class 101, currently have 510 applicants as the commissioner testified to. Our recruitment for this cadet class started in December of 2019. Recruitment cycles typically last about 4 to 6 months. This one lasted 17 months. For 17 months, we recruited for one cadet class just in order to get and attain enough applications that we could actually justify running the class. In the final quarter of that recruitment process, we spent a little over $130,000 on the micro-targeting campaign that the commissioner talked about, and also static billboard campaign. So that $130,000 went to visibility, basically, because what we found is that the lower our manpower gets, the lower the number of troopers we have, the less visible they are. And that's one of our best recruitment tools, is being seen out in the public. It makes people think, hey, I might want to do that someday. So we had to make ourselves visible, and we had to pay for that. That's about $130,000. We also added the additional 5 personnel that the commissioner spoke about. When you talk about the personnel costs for those folks, about $112,500 for that quarter. So in about 3 months, we spent almost $250,000 on recruitment efforts. In a branch that's typically only got 1 or 2 personnel and are able to fulfill that role. So what are our recruitment challenges? And we have analyzed this one to death. This is where my presentation becomes a little bit subjective instead of objective, because some of this is my opinion. But from what I'm seeing, the current generation of employee really seeks a work-life balance. And with Kentucky State Police, especially in our sworn capacities, that is just not something that you really have. You work at night when you start out. You work weekends. You work holidays, and you go to court during the day. Senator Carroll could tell you all about those days of being a patrolman, I'm sure, at Paducah Police Department. You get off shift at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and you have to be back in court at 9 a.m. the next morning. So work-life balance is kind of hard for us to juggle because there's demands that are external to what our agency demands that make that hard to balance. Stress levels and the health concerns that come with those stress levels, which I'll get a little bit more into in the next slide. But the stress levels of our personnel at our current state are astronomical. Folks are hurting. They're hurting. They're getting sick easier. They're being faced with health challenges because of the stress that is on them in the current climate that we're living in. Private sector salaries versus public sector salaries. That's a challenge that the public sector will probably always have, but right now it's a true challenge, especially with our telecommunicators who are paid $12.35 an hour, and Walmart in Paducah is hiring at $14.50 an hour. They can literally leave a job where they may have to walk somebody through CPR on their infant child and the stress levels that are induced because of that, to where their biggest concerns is whether or not they're stocked up on toilet paper and vitamins and whatever else that the customers are looking for. And don't get me wrong, there is nothing wrong with those folks who are working at Walmart. We've seen over this last year and a half of being in a pandemic that those folks are essential to us. But the stress levels are a whole different ballpark for our dispatchers and our troopers as to what they face and what they see and what they live through. Pension concerns, as Commissioner's already mentioned, there are folks who are worried about the unfunded liability that will check out every year. As soon as they're eligible to retire, they leave because they're afraid that if they don't leave, that they're going to lose some sort of security in what that pension that they've been guaranteed is. So there are people that are leaving, and in addition to people leaving because of pension concerns, there are people who are not coming on to the agency because they're afraid that they'll work for 20 or 25 years and then there won't be anything in the account anymore for them to draw. That's a struggle that we have to overcome. Shift work for young folks that come out of our academy and they're getting ready to start a family, and our telecommunicators as well. They work nights, they work weekends, they work holidays. It's not your ideal shifts. It's the rookie shifts, and those are not the ones that are easy to start a family, to start establishing yourself in a community. There's no paid overtime for our sworn employees with the exception of federal grant overtime. Federal highway safety overtime is the only paid overtime our folks get. All these local agencies that we're competing with and the federal government pay paid overtime, and we just don't have it budgeted. Civil unrest and public perception. Obviously, we don't have to even really go into any details on this. The public perception of policing right now is not the most popular, but that makes it harder for us to recruit the people that we should want, the people that are highly qualified, the people that are professional, the people that we don't have to worry about those implicit and explicit biases. Those are the ones that we want, and it's hard for us to recruit them whenever the public perception is that we're bad. Manpower shortages. Those are not only, I already talked about visibility, but also officer safety concerns. Some of our troops in the field back up 45 minutes to an hour away. That's just how it is in Eastern Kentucky. There's no fast roads to get you where you need to be in some of those areas. And when your backup's 45 minutes to an hour away and you learn that while you're going through training and scenarios and you're in a fight for your life, you have to win that fight before backup can get there, because you're not going to be able to fight for your life for 45 minutes to an hour. That's scary to some folks. And it should be. It has to be. That's how we keep our folks alive. Moving into the occupational stress, and I'm just going to say this is not my graphic. I clearly got this straight from the American Heart Association, but these numbers speak and tell a story in and of themselves. The average life expectancy for a police officer is 57 years old. 57 years old. They are losing 22 years to their civilian counterparts. That's just with the typical occupational stress of being a police officer. That's on average. That doesn't include the amount of stress that we've added on our folks in this recent crisis that we have with manpower, because the crime level doesn't change, and the amount of work that needs to be done doesn't change. It's the amount of people who can do it, that we have to do it, that changes. So basically, that old adage and mantra that we've lived by for years, that we will do more with less, we're forced to do more with less. And that just adds additional stress to our folks, on top of financial concerns they may already have because they're not making enough money. And when we get into that, we have a lot of our personnel, a lot of our sworn personnel who seek outside employment, and we have to approve that as command staff. So we get these outside employment requests. I'm going to get a little personal with you. One gentleman that I mentored into this agency about 6 years ago, he's been a trooper for 6 years. His wife is a school teacher. She teaches high school math, which is also a hard thing to find. She's a gem, right? High school math teachers are hard folks to find in the employment field. This gentleman and his wife decided that they wanted to have their third child. So we get an outside employment request from him a few months ago so that he can deliver pizza for Papa John's at night after he gets off shift with us. There's no reason why that's the state and where we're at. A trooper with 6 years of service with a wife who's a high school teacher should be able to have 3 kids without having to seek a third job. He's also the youth pastor at my church. And I don't know if he gets compensated for that or not, but that's a third job that he has in addition to the fourth job of being a dad. So that's where we are. And when I saw these statistics about occupational stress and 57-year-old police officer lifespan, I couldn't help but think of our brother from Muhlenberg County, retired Major Ricky Allen, who passed away last year, September of 2020, massive heart attack, 52 years old. Ricky took care of himself. He was an all-star athlete. Any softball tournament or basketball tournament in the past 2 decades, he lit you up. 52 years old, massive heart attack. Passed away. I talked to his wife last night because I wanted to tell her that I was going to talk about him a little bit today. And they're doing well, but just another thing, this job is already a lot. It's a lot to take on. And when financial problems are also in the background of that, it just worries me of how much stress we're putting on our folks. I want to thank you all. Again, I told you I'm very passionate. I appreciate your attention. Every one of you have been very attentive, and I know I've talked for a long time. I'm very self-aware of that. But I do thank you because you've invited us here today to talk about these things, and to me that speaks volumes about how much you care, and that's important to me. So thank you, and any questions that you have, we're here for those.
Thank you so much to both of you for being here. Your testimony is obviously passionate. You're passionate about your job and your colleagues. And you present us with quite a few challenges that we need to address here sooner rather than later. So we do have some questions for you. First up is Senator Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll try to limit my questions because I know there are others. Talk a little bit, Lieutenant Colonel, about the trooper Rs. How many are there right now? Are those included in your total numbers? And what are you all seeing as far as each year? Are those numbers declining, that troopers that come back? Or how does that system, how's that set up?
So currently, total, I'm thinking around 70, 65 or 70. Go ahead.
Actually, for Grace or Trooper R's will be 62, and we have 8 that are with our CVE that are of the R as well.
So to answer your question, Senator, we don't include those in our current active status because of the fact that they're on a personal service contract, and they terminate those at any given time. So they're on a year-to-year contract, and it's just not a guaranteed thing that they're going to come back from year to year.
Have those numbers been pretty consistent over the last 5-10 years?
They've ebbed and flowed some. but we've seen a few more come back in recent years. I think some folks that retired early, whenever pension reform was being talked about before, ended up coming back a little bit early.
Is that an area of focus that could help alleviate some of the immediate crisis?
It is, and actually we do reach out to those, but what we have seen is that other agencies and even school resource or schools are reaching out to those because there's a better schedule and for the money that they're paying. So we're actually losing some of those as well to other agencies and other entities, even the private sector.
The other thing with that, Senator, is that whenever our Trooper R's come back, they don't get any type of sick time, vacation time, anything like that, because it's a personal service contract. So they only get paid for the hours that they work. And if they go to a local agency as a retiree, they get full benefits, with the exception of double dipping into the retirement system.
Okay. And then as far as the KVEs that you all absorbed, how many of those are there, and are they included in your total numbers?
They are not. There's 60 that are currently still working, and then we have 8 additional that are on the R program, the retiree comeback. Mm-hmm. So those are separate from these numbers.
And do those, I guess they're called troopers now, do they serve the same function, or are they still focusing on vehicle enforcement?
They are solely for the commercial vehicle enforcement and commercial driver's license testing.
Okay. And the last question I'll ask is as far as the pay scale, and I remember it seemed that KSP started lower, but in Paducah it didn't take long till you all surpassed what we paid. Have you all done the charts on 5 years in, 10 years in, how you compare with these other agencies, and where does your ranking improve after 5 years, 10 years, from 74 up, or have you all scaled that out?
Not with each independent agency. We've done that with a few, like Indiana State Police. We've done some comparisons there. Sad thing is, 8-year lieutenant colonel makes what I make at Indiana State Police. So it doesn't improve our ranking against Indiana State Police. We haven't done it with each of the Paducah, Louisville, Lexington, and all of those agencies.
And I think for us, it would be important for us to see that entire career scale and doing some of these comparisons, and maybe kind of help us to understand where the focus needs to be. And obviously at the initial hiring, that scale needs to come up. But for us to be able to adequately budget and plan, we do need to know 5 years in, 10 years in, where are you all? And just looking at the fiscal part of it, and then the tactical part of it from you all's end on being able to recruit what's going to be most effective for you, and in helping to get new troopers in, is, what does the pay scale need to be starting out, and can we rebalance that scale, and looking at those different facets of it. But you all have done your homework, and I'm impressed. You didn't just walk in here asking for money. You've done your research, and that's what it takes to solve these problems. And it's a shame, and just a quick comment, for the life of me, I cannot understand what is going on these days to where, and I'll tell you this, the bill that I filed last session, the anti-riot bill, I have received threats, I have received criticisms, I've been called every name in the book from people across this entire country for trying to help protect our officers. What have we come to when we're to that point? The men and women that keep us safe every day, where I get threatened to pass a bill trying to protect in high-risk situations. I don't understand where we are, and there are some politicians throughout this country that are not fit to serve in the offices that they're in, that attack the very people who keep us safe from day to day. And I don't understand it. I don't begin to understand it, and maybe I'm a little tainted because I wore the uniform for 24 years. But know that the vast majority of people in this Commonwealth are with you and with all the officers in this state. And I know without question that this legislature is with you. And I look forward to help trying to solve some of these problems and to help KSB move forward. It's obvious we are getting to a crisis situation, and we need to take some action to get this resolved. And Mr. Chairman, I'll stop there. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Westerfield, remotely.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate the presentation. I was curious about a couple of things. One, the stats 2 or 3 slides back, and there were a series of statistics showing different, not just recruiting class numbers, and I saw the big number, obviously, when you all made the change, or when the legislature made the change back in the 90s. Thank you very much. That slide, and then others showing retirement numbers and projections. Does that include lab staff as well, your non-patrol KSB staff and professionals?
No, sir, it does not. That's just sworn troopers.
Okay. I've said this before. I know you're aware of it. I'm sure you are aware of it. I'm alarmed by everything you've presented here. I'm equally alarmed by the very identical report that can be made about your forensic professionals throughout the entire KSB lab system, from top to bottom, who are woefully underpaid compared to every state around us, and certainly the private sector. And they actually have the potential to earn still more than what the Erlanger City Police could pay someone in the example that you gave. Going from the modest pay we're able to offer them after they've been trained and have some experience here to 6-figure sums, and then some out in other states and in the private sector doing a lot of the forensic work that they do for us. And just like your sworn troopers on the road from one end of the Commonwealth to the other, being in such short number, you all have sworn troopers that obviously aren't able to, because you have a lower number than you want, you can't patrol as much of the state and protect as much of the state as you want. Similarly, your lab folks can't keep up with the demand. And we're about to see a glut of criminal cases that have been sitting and waiting for a long time, try to be tried and catch back up for a shutdown of a year plus in our court system. So it's a huge mess. I appreciate you clarifying that this does not include them. And I'm wondering, and I may have missed it, so if you've said it and I didn't catch it, I apologize, but is there a dollar figure that you all have asked for or proposed that would rectify this? And I would want it to include not just your sworn troopers, but also your lab folks. If you could pick a number, what would it take from a budget allocation to bring you guys up to a respectable spec?
First of all, I'd like to thank the legislature for the funding for our lab personnel last session, where they received a 15% pay raise, and as well as a 40-hour work week. That is really a step in the right direction. Unfortunately, they're still the lowest paid in the country, a forensic laboratory. But that is a step in the right direction, and we want to thank everyone, for that assistance. As far as the dollar figure, we're still currently working with the personnel cabinet and OSBD on those figures, and as we get those, we'll be more than glad to get those back to the committee.
I appreciate that. I know you will. I'd like to have those. I know that process takes time. But obviously, we're about to come into our 3rd budget in a row in consecutive years. So surely the mathematics and the projections and calculations aren't as cumbersome or complicated as they might be if we had done it since 2 years before now. But I guess it's like a slew of other requests we get before we draft a budget. Everyone asks for generic increases, but there are scarce few folks that actually put a number to that increase, so we know exactly what to shoot for. I would support increasing your pay for your sworn troopers and for your lab. I would support making your lab professionals, those that have to deal with the gruesome sometimes things that they've got to deal with and expose themselves to all manner of substances, and bodily fluids, and Lord only knows what, sharps included and all that, to hazard pay and the benefits that come with it, along with your sworn troopers. So let us know what that amount is as soon as you possibly can. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Nemus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for Representative Massey and then one for myself, if I might proceed. Representative Massey had to leave, but he wanted to make sure that he expresses his gratitude toward the two of you and to all the men and women in gray. He says, Representative Massey's question is, could we set up a counterpart ROTC-like program in high schools for Kentucky State Police? Would that be something is that something you thought about, or is that something that could be done?
Actually, go ahead, Lieutenant.
Yeah, I actually have started researching and trying to develop a similar type program, and it would be like a leadership for teenagers, a leadership program, because we've just gotten an apprenticeship off the ground that's actually taking effect this year in August, or in July. We'll be hiring. I'm sorry, August is when we're going to have all the retirements. July, we're going to have an apprenticeship position that's open in Franklin County. It's a pilot program right now, but it's a federally approved and state approved apprenticeship where as soon as you get out of high school, you come on to our agency in either a telecommunicator path or a CVE inspector path. And as you work through your career, you learn all the different aspects of the agency. You do some ride-alongs with the troopers. You go to the lab and you learn about the things that Senator Westerfield just talked about that they have to do there at the lab. And you learn all the history of our agency. And hopefully what that leads to is a career with us as a trooper in the end of it. And if not, if somebody chooses that's not what I want to do, then hopefully we've got them latched into that telecommunicator role or that CVE inspector role, and we still got a good employee. But to build into that program of the apprenticeship, one of the things that I would really like to see is a program in the high schools where we start to really get personal and get to know young people and get them wanting to do this, wanting to wear this uniform, and realize that we're their friends. We're here to help them. We're here to protect them. It's good community policing as well as a great recruitment tool. So I definitely agree with Representative Massey that would be a great idea.
And I would recommend that you reach out to Representative Massey if you don't know, and you probably do. He's the House Judiciary Chairman, so reach out to him. And for respect to myself, I'm from Louisville, and we don't use KSP often, although I know you guys come in and help us when we have major civil unrest, when we have an officer down. You guys come in and help us. I've been involved in situations where you come in and you serve very serious search warrants and arrest warrants. So even though you're not there on a daily basis, you're there when we need you. And you've been there when we needed you last summer. I've said it a number of times. I'm going to say it again. Thank you very much for being in our town in our most time of most need. It gave us some comfort, and it helped not only our local law enforcement, but it helped our community through one of the most difficult times in my lifetime. And so I want to thank you. I also want to make sure that you guys know, because a lot of citizens, loud citizens, make a bunch of noise and they attack law enforcement all the time. When I go around in my district, I want you to know and I want you to take this back to the troopers. I want you to know what my constituents say. The folks who go to work every day, who pay taxes, the folks who are raising their families, those who are making Kentucky thrive. What they are is they're supportive of law enforcement. They may not go out and get bullhorns and yell about it, but they support law enforcement. The men and women in gray, the men and women in blue, men and women in brown. And when I go on porches trying to get votes, it's not uncommon for somebody to say, "Do you support law enforcement? Because if you don't, I can't support you." So I want the troopers to know around this state that the citizens support you. They may not be loud about it, but they do. And so I want to also attach myself really quickly to something that Senator Westerfield said. He said, "Give us a number. We need to know a number." And he said he's alarmed. Well, I think this is a red light alarm presentation. You came to us a few years ago with needs for firearms because the ones you were using were Vietnam era.
Yes.
We came through. You came to us and you said, "Look, our cars, which are the offices effectively of most of our troopers, are dangerous." When I go to the Wall of Valor at the KSP headquarters, most of the troopers who die on the job, they die because of traffic accidents. Some shootings, yes, mostly traffic accidents. So we came through. You made a big ask, and we came through. It's time to make a big ask here for pay. And any Republican or Democrat on here who likes to say they're for law enforcement, I'm one of them. We either come through with money or we need to shut up and stop saying thank you, because thank yous don't pay the mortgage. Thank yous don't help keep people from needing to deliver pizzas to make ends meet. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart from the city of Louisville, and I want to ask you to make a big ask this coming year, so we can hopefully come through for you guys like we've done before, and like I know everybody on this committee wants to do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just have one final question. We discussed recruitment levels. I know we're running out of time here. And what is going to happen to the agency? How will your mission change if we don't do something to improve recruitment and retention? What will it mean to the eastern part of the state, the western part of the state? Will it mean more overtime, more stress, more 45-minute backup problems become 60-minute backup issues? What's going to happen to the agency if, let's say, we go down to we don't fulfill this, or we don't solve this crisis, and it gets down to 600 personnel?
Well, obviously, we would have to adjust our mission to a point, but still yet, we're the Kentucky State Police is the primary law enforcement agency in multiple areas in Kentucky. That is something that we cannot be able to pull away, but we may have to adjust our assets to locations that have no police services whatsoever. Traditionally, we are a rural law enforcement agency. That's why we were created. But we may have to adjust some of those. We may have to adjust some of our special duty troopers that we have in non-traditional duties. But at the end of the day, we have to be able to respond to that man, woman, or child that needs our response because they're in a traffic accident or a domestic or the multiple issues that we see from day to day.
Thank you. It seems apparent that we must meet this challenge that you presented to us today. We will do so. Keep working at it for this next session. If there are no other questions, yes, Senator Carroll.
Just a quick one in closing. With the did KSP go to the 25-year retirement when everyone else did?
Yes, sir.
And when will that kick in as far as to be able to help with longevity?
Well, we're already with that. We're already facing some of the troopers that can actually leave with their 401k. So that's some of the things that we're already facing.
So part of that, are you talking about tier 2 or tier 3?
Yeah, where it extended from 20-year to a 25-year.
Okay. Tier 2, I believe, started in 2009 or 2008?
2008.
2008?
2008.
So we won't see those folks getting to retirement until 2020 or 20, what, I can't even do math right now, 2032, 2033?
Yeah, I just couldn't remember the date.
But our tier 3 folks, what the commissioner was talking about, a lot of our tier 3 folks who, once they get vested in that tier 3 system, can pack up and take it with them. We're seeing them leaving a lot. That's a lot of who we're losing.
I think that helps in a lot of areas, but in this
Hurts us in
particular
this
area is probably not a good thing. Where is, and with the research that you all have done, where do you feel like that the best investment can be trying to preserve your existing troopers longer, or focusing on getting more in at the beginning, or a balance of the two?
It's really a balance of the two, and especially with the expanded law enforcement services that we provide to the Commonwealth. That takes time and experience and a lot of expense to train those. But in the other side of that, we're also training up younger troopers that we have to bring in to be able to replace them as they do retire. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that you had asked earlier about Trooper R's, with this 25-year retirement, that Trooper R program has really helped prop us up right now with those 62 Trooper R's. But that really is going to have a shelf life, because as troopers have the 25-year retirement, they're going to be a lot older, and then are not going to be able to come back and be able to provide that support that they're currently providing.
That's a good point. I like the idea of that you are talking about with kids out of high school coming in. I think that's great. The Explorer programs at the local agencies work very well, and carrying that another step, that's interesting. And I think that could go a long way. And I think the younger age we get to these kids to educate them and really let them understand what law enforcement is all about, I think the more effective we're going to be. And I think it's up to law enforcement to do that, because, obviously society today is not going to be much benefit to that. And the kids need to know the truth about what law enforcement is all about and who law enforcement officers are, not what they're told by the mainstream media or the radical element in this country, but the people that live it every day. And we hear all the bad things. And every day I look at the media and I just shake my head and I complain to my wife, and I know she's tired of hearing it. But that's all you see every day. They're just looking for every flaw that they can find in any law enforcement officer anywhere in this country. Any mistake that one makes, it's all over everywhere. And you don't hear anything about the tens of thousands of things that they do daily to help people, to save lives, just, buying people lunch, buying them groceries, all the things that we all do throughout our career. Nobody ever knows about that, but that's what law enforcement's all about. And our public has lost that message, and we've got to educate the younger generation on what it's all about. And I think sounds like you all are being pretty proactive with that, with your recruiting, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate the fact you all have done your homework, and I think that's going to go a long way as we get into the budget.
Thank you, sir.
Gentlemen,
thank
you
you.
all have my ultimate respect, and all the troopers do, and all the officers. Been there, done it, nowhere near in the environment that it is today, and I feel for the officers, and my heart goes out to them. Can't imagine what they're going through today, especially in the more urban areas, in the struggles that they're having. And it's time for this state to step up and really show another level of support for our law enforcement. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, I want to thank the presenters today. It's been a very important meeting, important discussion. If there are no further questions, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. No objection. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.